What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In the last video, I got both of the rear CV axles re-greased on the inner boots and joints. I also replaced the gear oil in the differential and the fluid in the AYC. I've had the car tuned for about a month now, but I have not been able to drive it at all yet. There's literally only one thing holding me back from it right now. It's an issue that I've had with the car since I bought it. The car is obviously drivable because I did all the tuning with it, but there is a major steering or suspension issue. Obviously, with everything that I've done to the Evo, I've come across and had to mess with a lot of the steering and suspension components, but I have not found anything broken or out of place. I'm kind of in the dark on this video since I don't really know exactly what the problem is just yet. I'll explain the symptoms that I'm having to you guys here in just a second, but for this video, I'm just going to be diving into the suspension and steering and seeing if I can figure out what the problem is. Stay tuned. If you didn't see the last video, definitely go check it out. I did end that video with the wheels not being on here. I did plan on doing some other stuff, but I changed my mind. Suspension issue that I'm having is not in the rear, it's actually in the front. But I did pull both of the rear axles back here. I replaced the grease on the inner joints. When I replaced the clutch up front, I replaced the transmission and the transfer case fluid. I wanted to do the differential and the AYC too all at the same time. So the front pieces of the driveline have a couple of hundred extra miles on them from the break-in. But for this video, let me explain to you guys the issue that I'm having. I need to show you from inside of the car. Let me start off by saying the car drives very straight. If I'm in a straight line, it tracks very straight. It doesn't drift to one side or the other. Everything feels really good. But when I take it on some back roads and I'm going at speed around 45 to maybe 55 miles an hour and I make a right turn, I can feel the entire car shift outward, and then when I go back center again, the alignment is just slightly off. From there, I can pretty much make as many right turns as I want and I will not feel this issue at all. I can be going 80 miles an hour around a turn and it will not budge. But the moment a left-hand turn comes up, and again, I have to be going kind of fast, 45 to 55 miles an hour, I go to make a left-hand turn, car shifts outward again, and again, alignment is either back straight or maybe slightly off this way. From there, again, I can make as many left turns as I want, doesn't happen. The moment I make another right turn, happens again. If I'm just putting around town and I'm just cruising through street lights and things like that, I can make as many right turns, left turns, I never feel a thing. There has to be some sort of load on it. I actually posted a video almost exactly a year ago when I had installed the gauges over here. I took the car out for a little cruise. The GoPro was filming me and I got what was happening on camera. I'm going to throw that in here right now so you guys can see what's actually happening. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but the whole car like kicked outward. It stopped itself, but that was weird. Is that some sort of, I don't know what that would be. That was weird. Dude, what is that? Car is already in the air. I've looked at every booted joint on the inside and everything looks good. No tears, nothing's moving freely. No weird clanking or clunking noises when I turn the wheels back and forth. My hypothesis at this point is it's the steering rack bushings. The other possibility that I thought may be, which was very unlikely, one of the teeth on the rack and pinion was possibly shaved down or even broken off, and it was just skipping that one every time I would turn the wheel. I also pulled this entire assembly apart just to check all inside of here to see if there was anything missing. Pretty much checked everything that's easy aside from pulling the steering rack itself, which is kind of the direction that I'm heading right now. I'm going to pull this wheel off. I'm going to pull the other wheel off on the other side. I'm going to pull the tie rods out on both ends. I'm going to try by myself at first and just kind of wiggle it back and forth and see if there's any movement. May have to get somebody else over there on the other side to wiggle the other side. That's my first test, just to kind of see if there's any play in this thing. outer tie rods are disconnected from the hub here. They did put up a fight though. I hammered and hammered on this knuckle, but it would not drop out of there. I put the nut on top and even tried hammering from there also. This thing would not budge. I even tried the air chisel. I put a little piece of wood on there just to see if that would knock it loose. Sometimes you just need the right tool for the job. I picked this guy up at good old Harbor Freight. It's actually a little bit scary, but it does work perfectly. I also picked up this ball joint separator in case this one didn't work. This one was 20 bucks and I think this one was around 10. I'm still gonna hold on to this thing. You never know when it may come into use. This one worked awesome. The bottom end just slides under your knuckle, and this top piece, you put it on top of the nut, tighten this thing down, and as you tighten it down, it just keeps compressing and compressing until it finally pops that thing out of there. I highly suggest you leave the nut on there, otherwise when it pops out of there, it's gonna slam all the way down. Like I said, it is a little bit scary when it does finally pop loose. You can see that a little bit of grease came out the top there. It did it on the other side also. I'm not sure if this thing is just compressed that far up in there that it pushes it back and a little bit leaks out, or if when I used that little tool, it actually compressed it on there and pushed it. Either way, I don't care. I'm gonna replace these outer tie rod ends anyway. Inner tie rod feels a little bit loose, but it still has some tension into it. Same thing with the passenger side. Inner tie rod, it is a little bit loose, but there is a little bit of tension. Outer tie rod does move around, but it comes back to center. One thing that I did notice on this side though, is you can see this thing is cockeyed just a little bit, and I assume they did that with an alignment. I feel like they should have just pushed it just about 1/8 of a turn more just to straighten it up. When this outer tie rod is up in the knuckle, it's pretty much maxed out all the way to this side all the time. But again, nothing that would be causing the symptoms that I described earlier. I pushed on it and pulled on both sides just to see if it actually budges from the rack itself. I don't feel any extra play or movement in it. But what I have decided to go ahead and do, which is what I was trying to keep from doing all along, and that is just pulling the entire steering rack out. Honestly, at this point, it's going to be for the best. Not to mention, if you're familiar with the channel, I've had all of these inner CV boots leaking. I was able to get most of the grease cleared up that I could reach to, but there are a lot of areas under here on the subframe everywhere that I need to clean up really, really good. And the only way to do that is to have it out of the car. Hopefully along the way I figure out what my issue is. Worst case scenario, at least I get to put a deep clean on this thing. Let's get it out of here. Subframe and steering rack are out of the Evo. Let me start off by saying I still don't know what the problem is. For anyone who wants to know the process of pulling this out, I'll have to remove all of the plastic undercarriage here. Lucky for me, I'm only running the front piece, so I just removed the center part. You'll have to remove the front transmission mount. After that, you've got these 3 big ones right here holding this brace in, and then 2 smaller ones. After you pull all of those out, this thing will drop out of there. In the very back, you'll have this bracing right here. 6 bolts holding that in, and then it'll pop out of there. While you're back there removing that one, go ahead and pull these 2 bolts right here. There's one on this side, one over here on this side. Both of those brackets are connected to the subframe. Tie rod ends I already had removed, but of course those need to come out. You'll have a big bolt holding this ball joint into this knuckle over here. You will also have to take out the rear transmission mount bolt. You'll have these 2 screws that go in right here, and then one over here on this side that's holding in the return line for the power steering fluid. You'll have this big hose clamp you'll have to remove right here on the return line. You'll have to yank on it pretty good, but it'll come loose and then just drain that power steering fluid. One thing extra that I did do was use my little vacuum to suck out all of the extra in the reservoir. I did that before disconnecting this just to keep it from draining a whole bunch. You'll have to disconnect the feed line. It's a banjo bolt that holds it in right here. This thing looks like it's tucked away, but it's not bad to get to as long as you have a little extension. You'll definitely get a little bit of fluid draining out of there. One last thing to do before removing all of the bolts from the subframe, and that is disconnect the steering rack from the steering column. This is done from the inside of the car. You'll have to remove this little plastic piece. It's one little clip off to the side over here, and then you've got this little screw right here. It doesn't actually come out. Just use your flat head. Just keep twisting and keep pulling until it actually comes loose. This bolt right here just basically goes through. It clamps it down onto that little shaft. Just pull the bolt all the way out of there, and that's all you've got to do. Once you start lowering the subframe, it'll just drop out by itself. One thing that I did do was mark on the bottom down there with a little red Sharpie. It's probably very hard to see, but I showed my pin on there, and if I get my head ducked in there without the camera, I can actually see it. After that, throw a jack under there. If you got a couple of jacks, it would not be a bad idea. It's 4 main giant bolts holding the subframe in, one here, one back there, and then the same ones on the other side. I screwed up a little bit with my jack placement. I put it dead center, and what you really want to do is kind of lean it farther forward. There's a lot more weight in the front end. When I started lowering it, it started falling forward on the jack. Back to the issue that I'm having. Like I said, I don't know what the heck is going on. Everything seems to be fine. I've been wrecking my brain so hard trying to think about the symptoms that this thing was giving and what could be causing it. I am going to replace these, but I still don't feel like this is what's going to be causing the issue that I'm having. Ball joints are pretty stiff. I can break them loose if I put a lot of force on there. They're clearly not brand spanking new, but I don't feel like this would be causing my problem. I don't think end links could be the problem. Even if these things were bad, I don't think they'd be causing the symptom that I'm feeling. These bushings on the sway bar look good too, but again, the sway bar I don't feel like would be causing my issue. Everything pretty mimics itself on this side over here too. There's nothing that specifically stands out. Can't really get a good look at those bushings that are holding the steering rack in. As I said before, that was my first thought. I think from here, what I'm going to do is go ahead and start removing everything off of the subframe, pull the steering rack, really get a good look at all of these bushings and joints, and then while everything is taken apart, I'll get it all cleaned up really good. Subframe control arm, steering rack, sway bar, all taken apart, all cleaned up. Still have not found anything wrong at all. These bushings are absolutely fine. There is nothing wrong with them at all. They're not deteriorating. I even took the little boots off just to see if there was something wrong with the rack. All the teeth sticking up look fine. Grease looks fine. So I don't think that there's anything wrong internally there. If you actually order a new boot kit, it comes with the zip tie. So that's what I replaced the little metal clamp with. One good thing that did come of it is I got these things pretty squeaky clean. Control arms were very, very dirty. Had a bunch of grease from those inner CV joints that leaked. I got the subframe cleaned up really good too. I am going to have to go back into these little crevices and clean everything out by hand. Aside from that, this thing is pretty clean also. It does suck extremely bad that I didn't find out what the issue is. Just because these things are worn out, I did go ahead and order some new end links for the sway bar. And then I also went ahead and ordered the new tie rod ends. I do have a couple of more suspects that I think could be my problem. The only thing is I need to get this stuff back on there before I can test it out. My brother-in-law had something that he was chasing on his F-150 recently, and it turned out to be a bad wheel bearing. If the bearing is bad, it could make sense why it's slipping from one side to the other. The other culprit may be the top strut mount up here. If you look right in the back there, you can see where that rubber is starting to crack. But I'll be saving that for the next video. I'll get the new tie rod ends and the end links on. I'm going to get all of this put back together, get it reinstalled, take it for a test drive. Hopefully the alignment's not too bad off. Maybe I'll be lucky and the problem will be fixed when I take it for a little test drive. I'll try to shake the tire on here before I take it out just to test that wheel bearing. And I'll do what I can to test this thing out too. I won't lie, ending this video, I'm pretty freaking annoyed right now. I'm not an expert, but I like working on the car myself. I didn't want to take it anywhere, and so I'm just going to roll out everything on my own. Sometimes you just got to learn the hard way, but the point is that you are learning. Probably just going to title this video on how to pull your steering rack or something like that. If it helped you out in any way, please hit that like button. If you want to see more going on with the Evo, hopefully watch me fix this problem or continue to fail, hit that subscribe button, and I will catch you guys next time.